Welcome back to another episode of Awakened Reflections podcast. With me, I have Emily. Emily is someone who I feel very aligned with before we hopped on the call and before we hopped into this conversation. And I can't wait to share all of the wisdom nuggets that she's going to share with you guys. I'm sure she's going to come through on. No stress, no worries, no pressure on that. I'm trusting it. I'm trusting it for sure. And yeah, Emily, how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
I am great. I feel full of gratitude and yeah, here to have amazing conversations.
Thank you for wanting to be on the show. And for those who are not familiar with you, could you please walk us through who you are, your story, and what you do?
Yeah, so we'll try to keep this short and sweet because I feel like to tell my story it would take several days. So, high level version who I am the co founder of Transformative Leadership, where we teach leadership development from a holistic view. So it's more a leader of self. And then we also do business consulting. So processes, operations, business scaling strategy. We are not industry specific, but we do work with a lot of different coaches, authors, small businesses, and some corporate clients as well in what we do. I'm also a single mom of two boys, passionate about fitness. I powerlifted competitively for 4 years and now transitioning into bodybuilding. Most people know me for my story of leaving the Amish when I was 17 and never looking back. So there's a lot to unpack there. But yeah, I left when I was 17, went through a culture shock, and from a sixth grade education, graduated from Purdue with organizational leadership and supervision degree. Fast forward, had the career that I wanted, was at the top of the career game and realized that's not what is in alignment with me. Went through a huge spiritual awakening, and that was really where my entire life shifted in a lot of different ways. And also where the business was born. Both me and my business partner were going through the spiritual awakenings at the same time. And we realized the disconnect of leadership and operations and how they go hand in hand. And yeah, that's the high level version. So we'll just start there.
Awesome. It was a good version. It's really good. It's interesting that you brought up Amish because here I'm calling from Ohio. I think Ohio has the largest Amish population in the country. Then it's like Pennsylvania is pretty close. Indiana, Kentucky. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of Amish. I see a lot of Amish around here. It's pretty cool. Completely different lifestyle. So you lived in that lifestyle from you were born to what 17? You said. Oh wow, wow. I'm sure a lot of those stories, identities, beliefs were really embedded into you, and coming out of that must have been a huge. I wouldn't say a wake up call, but just a whole culture shock, like you said.
Yeah, it was definitely a culture shock, but it did teach me how to reprogram things and identities real quick. And it wasn't until I really got into self-development work to where I could really shift them quicker. And I still use the process to this day. But the culture shock is real. You're born and raised in your entire life. All you know is you're going to be a stay-at-home mom and that's it. And then you shift it, and then you think that even on the outside, I'm no longer dressed like Amish. I'm not in the culture, but I still have those beliefs. And I still think that everybody could see that I used to be Amish when no one really knew. Right. So it's just those things that you get to shift the internal and the external world, and both have to shift to be able to make a change.
What part of your life, like, how did you get started into this whole self improvement, personal growth, self development world? Because it's like what I notice from people that I talk to or conversate with, they're either really inspired from like an Instagram post or a YouTube video that they just weren't aware of it, or it's like from a desperation mode where it's like, okay, my life really fell to shit. I need to figure out a way to be happy, make money, grow. It's like it's usually on some type of spectrum of inspiration and desperation is what I see currently. Uh, how has your story worked? How did you get involved into this whole space?
Yeah, I always love to learn, and I always have this had this feeling of there's got to be more. I mean, on the outside, I had it all. I was married, had a very successful marriage, and all the things, you know. On the outside, I looked like I was killing it in life, but on the inside, I felt so empty. I kept searching. I'm like, there's got to be more. Like, there is more to life than what I'm feeling. There's more to this career. There's got to be more. And my now ex-husband used to be like, well, why don't you just settle? Like, you're fine. Like, you're killing it in life. Like, he didn't understand. But I kept following that path of like, there is more. So then I started like looking up motivational videos on YouTube, started reading. And then all of a sudden, as the universe has it, things fall apart. And as you grow, things shift. And he came home one day and was like, yeah, I don't love you anymore. So we ended up going through a divorce. And that really shifted me more into this work is now more important than ever because it was a very dark time. Like you go from being together with someone and, you know, you think you're going to be with them for the rest of your life. And they come home and say, you know, I no longer love you. And then later you find out they'd been cheating. So that really drove me into self development and then also drove me into spiritual awakening. And my spiritual awakening actually started with meditation. One of my friends told me, hey, you should probably start meditating. And I was like, powerlifters do not meditate. We work out, we don't meditate, right? But I started with just a 21-day challenge of Deepak Chopra's meditation. And the first couple of days were horrible. Like, I was like, this shit is stupid. Like, I had so much resistance to it, but I was committed because I'm competitive to finishing the 21 days. I was like, I'll go through the 21 days. And it was about day 5 or 6. All of a sudden, I remember walking outside and it was like the whole world had shifted. I saw everything different. I saw the trees for the first time. I was just in like awe. And I'm like, what happened? Like, how did it shift? And through that, that's how really the deep inner work and then working through trauma and all of that started. And that was the journey of it.
Yeah, was that Deepak Chopra meditation? I'm assuming it was a guided meditation.
Yes, and it's a free guided meditation. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify. And I, everyone that's like, hey, how can I get started? I'm like, go and do the 21-day. It's called Abundance Meditation. 21-day Deepak Abundance Meditation. It's free, but commit to finishing the 21 days, even if you don't feel like doing it or you don't know if you're doing it right. Because I used to think, I don't know if I'm doing it right or not, but we sitting here like we're just listening. And it's interesting because when I did it, and then the next time I did it, I actually had my boys go through it with me. I have 2 boys, and they also had very similar breakthroughs, but that taught them to find their version of meditation to stay grounded in a world, you know, we live in this world that doesn't always keep us grounded.
I absolutely understand that, and it's interesting too because I also notice a lot of people they really do start into this meditation journey through guided meditation, such as myself as well. There is an app. I don't use it anymore. I don't do guided meditations anymore. I do more like binaural beats. I listen to like binaural beats in one ear and the other, or I just listen to complete silence and I go into meditation. What was the app called? I think it was called like Insight Timer. I think it's what it
Yeah,
was.
that's a
That's how I
great
got.
app.
That's how I got introduced back in. I was actually still in high school when I came across it. I think I was 17, senior year, something like that. Yeah, that's how I got introduced into meditation, and probably meditated thousands of hours since then. It's changed my life dramatically. So I know the whole power of meditation. I always recommend it to people. And I always suggest a guided meditation in one form or another. And I'm sure Deepak's is absolutely brilliant because just knowing him, reading all of his books and knowing his stories and what he's contributed to the world, I'm sure that's a great way, a great place to start. Um, and there's that you mentioned you have like a powerlifting, bodybuilding background. And for those that aren't familiar, what's the difference between powerlifting and bodybuilding?
So powerlifting is really focused on strength. So it's about how strong you are. So it's 3 lifts: squat, bench, deadlift. And in the powerlifting community, it is a very different community than the bodybuilding. Powerlifting is that's really how I found my power as a female. Because when I started powerlifting, I realized, wow, like I'm super freaking strong. And then just being able to, because you're competing against yourself. And in bodybuilding, it's kind of similar, but powerlifting, it's all about your body weight versus the weight you lift. So I could be 160 pounds, but if I'm lifting 1,000 pound total in all the three lifts, my percentage is going to be higher than someone that maybe 180 pounds lifted the same way. So the scale is a little bit different, and the judge when you compete, you're judged on strength and whether you can follow the commands of the judge, right? So at and every level, they have records you can break at local, state, national, worlds. Just depends on how far you want to go. And in that community, it was very much like it doesn't matter how you look, what your background is, nobody cares. You just show up and you lift. And it's so empowering. And even from, I wasn't raised to have like great relationships with men because it was very much men and women are separated in the community. And so powerlifting taught me, like having a brother that actually cared, even though it wasn't my brother. There was guys that, I powerlifted with a group out of Indy and most of them were firefighters. And we would show up and they were like, hey, try this technique, do this. And it was very much like healing for me, even though they didn't know it at the time. So that's kind of powerlifting. And then bodybuilding on the other side is all about how you look. And I will say, bodybuilding, if you do not have a good self image of yourself before going into bodybuilding, it will wreck you. And the reason why I say that is because for females specifically, we don't necessarily, and no one likes necessarily to be judged on how they look. But if you take that personally, bodybuilding is going to destroy you. And you have to have the confidence that it doesn't matter what a judge says because they're really judging you based off looks. I compete in figure, so it's off of shoulders, hamstrings, and how you pose. So those are it's a complete opposite. In powerlifting, nobody cares how you look. It doesn't matter. You could have like whatever. It doesn't matter. On bodybuilding, it's all about how you care, how you look, and how you pose. So it's a complete different world. And it takes complete different discipline and complete different mindset. Bodybuilding, it's very cardio because you're trying to lean out. Powerlifting's like, yo, we got these heavy lifts. Like, let's go eat some carbs before we get this lift in. So it's a complete different transition.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and that makes a lot of sense. Something that you mentioned there that I would like to go deeper into is this whole concept of self-image, and because I know it's a very powerful one. This could be like a breakthrough moment for someone listening or watching this. Self-image, from what I understand, is basically one of the most important things ever because the way that you view yourself is the way that you view the world. It's kind of like the whole as within, so without hermetic philosophy or principle. It's really true. The way that you think about yourself, you see yourself, is the way that you see others and see the world. What has been the relationship for you to help build? Like, would you say now or through the process of bodybuilding and powerlifting that you had a healthy self image?
I would say now I do. Back then, even through powerlifting, I would say no, I did not have a healthy self image because it was very much around conditioned around what the world thought I should look like. It wasn't around what do I think I should look like and what do I want to look like and not what someone told me that I have to look like. For example, I'm never going to be stick figure thin. Like that is not my body type. And for the longest time, I was like, why can't I just drop 100 pounds and like be this, stick thin person? But then I realized that is not who I'm going to be. And I don't really want to be that. It's okay to be thick and curvy and you can still look really freaking good. But it goes back to the self concept and the way you talk to yourself. And I truly believe that you can 100% love yourself and still make progress on your goals. But it goes back to like completely letting go of conditions and of programming that has been projected onto us. And then also of programming that we do to ourselves. Someone says maybe like, oh, hey, you look extra thick. Well, you might take that as like, I look fat now. Right. So it's all like just letting go of those and getting back to your self image and your self concept. And at any point in time, we have the choice to choose to love ourselves fully and deeply, and still make progress to where we want to be. I think that's a huge thing when it comes to self image, the way we view ourselves. And still to this day, I will write down how I view myself and what I want to shift about it. So currently, I've noticed the pattern that I have to do all these things before I feel successful. So now I'm shifting that because I don't want that to be my image anymore. I want to be able to feel successful now because I've done a lot of great freaking things in my life. And it's just sitting down and saying, no, I choose to feel successful now. And even if I hadn't done all those great things in my life, I would still be successful. It's just like feeling worthy and having the concept of I'm a worthy being, because at the end of the day, we are all on the same playing fields. It doesn't matter if you're Oprah or if you're someone that works at McDonald's or you don't have a job. We're still all worthy of the same love. We're still all worthy and on the same playing fields. And we forget to treat ourselves with that type of worthiness and with that type of love.
What is your definition of success?
My definition of success, I feel like that shifts and grows and depends on what area of my life. So, my definition of success right now, overall, if you ask me, do you believe that you're successful now? I would say yes. Had you asked me a couple weeks ago, I would say no, because I was waiting until I hit a certain area of my life in bodybuilding. I was waiting to feel successful until I'm in a healthy, relationship. I'm dating, right? So I'm like, I'll be successful when I'm in this relationship. That's just a bullshit story. But now it's embracing that I am successful, and that is what success is. But it also doesn't mean that I'm not going to be driving towards my next business goal or improving bodybuilding or getting into a healthy relationship. But at the same time, I can still feel that success before I reach all those things.
And going back to self image, what were some of those tools, tips, or techniques? I know you mentioned writing them down that you changed the programs that you were believed in about yourself. 'Cause I'm sure meditation probably played a part into it. I know fitness did, and maybe some journaling. But is there any like specific um, things that you've done to change the language, to change the programs, change the beliefs about yourself to create this current self image?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that shifted, and I also put this in my book, was take a piece of paper out, write your name in the middle of the piece of paper and draw a circle around it. And around that circle, write all the identities you currently have, whether it's been given to you, whether it's good, whether it's bad, just write them all down and view it from like a third party view. Like just view it from like overall, like this is all the identities have. X out the ones you no longer want. Like just get rid of them, X amounts, and circle the ones you want to keep, and then add identities that you want to add. So, for example, if you don't feel like right now you are driven and you want to be driven, add that identity. And then based off of that, start taking action that same day. Because you can have that piece of paper and you can do all those works, but if you don't take action, and by action, what I mean is if you crossed off the identity that you no longer want to be a people pleaser and someone comes to you and asks you to do something that you don't want to do, and you have this fear of like, I can't really say no, I think I need to, say no. Take action and say no, like break the cycle right then and there. Because once you break that cycle right then and there, you're starting the shift of reprogramming. I'm no longer a people pleaser and I'm going to say no, I'm going to have boundaries. And just like if you have the identity of having a successful business, okay, one action you're going to take today to move that business forward. But the action behind it, this is where a lot of manifesting techniques, a lot of reprogramming are not talking enough about the action. It's like saying affirmations in the mirror and then not taking action.
Yeah, it's like a saying, I am someone who is healthy, but then you go and eat a donut immediately afterwards. You take the wrong action that doesn't co-align with the statement that you want to be. Did you ever do affirmations or incantations or anything like that to change your internal dialogue and all that stuff?
Yes, I've done a lot of affirmations. The biggest one when I saw affirmations really work for me was actually doing them in a mirror and saying them to myself and looking myself in the eyes. And it took me, when I started that process, this was early on in my journey, it probably took me a week before I could look in the mirror and say it into by looking in my eyes and saying the affirmations and not break down and cry or not like resist it, just to be say the affirmation and feel it, right? So there's a process, this whole say this affirmation for 21 days and it changes your life. It does not unless you sit in that feeling and unless you take action based off that.
Yeah, it's more than just saying it like mentally, but it's also embodying it emotionally, then also taking action with it, as you said. That really is the most important part because it's like there's people that you meet, and I'm somewhat guilty of this, but I'm kind of defending myself here. It's like I read hundreds of books, and some of those books don't really require you to take action, but they change the way that you frame or think about certain situations, like philosophy. It's hard to take actions on philosophy or spirituality books at times, but a lot of those people who think they are really changing, that they're just watching the YouTube videos or listening to the podcast or reading the books, but they're not taking the action, and that really is the key part to change and growth. And yeah, essentially, just take the damn action, just do the thing. Um, what are some of those current identities that you have that is helping you along this journey of being successful?
The identity that I am confident and everything that I desire to have gets to be easy. I was raised in a culture of everything gets is hard. You work hard, you hustle. Like that you work 6 days a week, it doesn't matter. Like you get Sunday off and that's it. Like everything is hard. And money doesn't grow on trees. Like all these stories and these beliefs. But I choose to believe that everything gets to be easy. And anytime it starts to feel hard, I ask, where am I complicating things that don't need to be complicated? Because we as humans, especially if you're a problem solver, we will create problems in our life, then solve them, then recreate another problem to solve them because we get a sense of achievement out of solving our problems when really there was not a problem. You were just maybe overthinking it. So now the identity of like it gets to be easy and I'm a confidence. And the other thing I would say too that I've been embracing more is the having the embedded ambition and drive. I know that I have that, but I'm not always vocal about it. Certain, close friends will say like, "Why are you so driven?" And it's like, no, I get to be driven because that's what's going to drive my life forward.
You don't have to, but you get to.
Exactly. I don't have to be driven. I don't have to, and I also don't have to hustle hard to be driven. Like being driven and hustle hard, people will pair those together, but it gets to be easy, and I can still be driven. Like I can still be driven for 4 hours and make it easy and make it work for me instead of having to hustle 24/7.
Yeah, hustle is like one of those things in society in this country where it's really, for me, has taken a negative term. For some people, that's their knight in shining armor. But it's like, to me, from a teacher of mine, he said that it's really silly to base your measurement, your worth, based on how productive you are in a day rather than how present you are during the day. So that's like how I view like the whole hustle versus just being present state of being. It's like, okay, because people who base their day off how productive they are, technically you can look at it as like that's how a slave operates, based on how much they operate and they do these things. They check off the items list rather than how present you are in each moment throughout your day, no matter what you do. And that's a way that I always frame it.
I also think that if you're very present, you will be productive.
Absolutely, that's the beautiful part about it. That's how it dances into it. Um, when did you develop the identity of someone who is competitive? Because that seems to be one of those identities that's probably stand back for a little while. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would say I always knew at a young age I was competitive, but it was always dimmed down for me. So, as growing up in the culture, it's like, no, you're just going to be XYZ. You don't get to have these big dreams and these big goals. But the more that I got into once I left and I started going to school, and I realized, when I went to go get my GED, because I didn't have a high school education, I had a sixth grade education. And the lady goes to me, well, it's probably going to take you like a year or 2 years to get your GED. And I was like, nah, like I'm going to have this in like 4 or 5 months. And I had it in 6 months. So knowing that, so every time I'm like set a goal, intuitively I know what I'm capable of. And the more that I continue to tap into that, whether it was school, what, regardless of what it was. And then when I shifted into powerlifting, I realized like, oh, I am really competitive, not against other people, but against my potential. So if I knew that I could hit 1,000 pound total, but I was like, I can continue to compete against that. So when I was at like 850, I was like, nah, we got another, I got this 1,000 pounds. And then the day I hit the 1,000 pound total, I was like, I totally could hit more than that now. So it's just at what ceiling I had for myself to compete, to move through that, to move past that and break through those barriers. So I'd say probably once I left and I really started making progress for myself and also embracing it, because I think sometimes when people say that they're competitive, there's a negative um, vibe that comes with it, but it can be healthy competitive. Like you can be healthy and be competitive.
Yeah, because all in all, it's just going in a direction of growth. That's like where it's all headed towards. It's just growing, which in itself, most people would probably label that as a positive, whether that's uh, competing against other people or competing against yourself. It's all a trajectory headed towards growth, which is most of us, I'd say, would agree that that's a positive. Um, so just out of curiosity, what were the exercises, or what was like the weights that you did to get to the 1,000 pounds?
So the day I hit it, so I had a 430 squat, 430 deadlift, and a 225 bench. So I hit over 1,000 pounds. My workout split to get there, I followed a few different splits, and I would say if you're looking to start in powerlifting, like look at the 5-3-1. That split got me some serious gains on my bench. And then I followed a cube program. So it was like a 12-week cube program where you would, each week, a different lift would be heavy. So week one, your bench would be heavy, your squat would be volume, your deadlifts would be explosive. And then it just rotated. And you projected where you were going to be after these 12 weeks, and you based all your numbers off that. You can honestly find this program for free online. I think it's under like Black Iron Beast. But that's was one of the splits that I followed a lot.
Yeah, congratulations on it. I just wanted to hear the numbers because it's like I've been lifting for 12 years now, and I'm just like, okay, that's some impressive weight. Wow.
And I would say for the bench side, I think that one was probably my biggest sense of accomplishment was my bench, because I had to work so hard to get there. But when I started realizing that by having heavy shoulder press, my bench increased, and then I would bench twice a week and do really heavy shoulder press with it, and that got me probably the most gains on my bench.
Wow. So the shoulders were really like the aiding support that you needed to take you to that next level. Wow. What do you see as the relationship between fitness and also in business? Like, do you think that going to the gym, pushing yourself, or just being healthy, does that translate over to your business success?
100% yes. And the way it translates, think about it when you're in the gym, and it's not every day I go into the gym motivated. That's just a bullshit story. People tell you you're not going to be motivated every day to go in the gym, but it's about showing up. And it's also a sense of accomplishment for me. So when I walk into the gym, even on the days that I did not want to come into the gym, and it takes me a while to warm up and to actually lift, those are the days where I'm like, I showed up for myself. And there's going to be those days also in business. It's not going to be, oh, we're motivated and we're inspired to take action every day, because that it just doesn't happen that way. Like you get to have those days to build the resilience, to build the consistency, to build the discipline. And just like in the gym, all those things can be transferred to the business. So it's how you are showing up. What are you developing in this moment? Because in each phase of my fitness journey, I also ran a lot of Spartan races. And that's where I think I dropped like 60 pounds running Spartan races to start with. But in each phase of my fitness journey, it's also in each phase of business, a different part of you is going to be required. And it's whether you have the courage and the strength to go there and push through, or whether you're just going to stay stagnant.
What is like the internal dialogue when you're faced with like an obstacle, whether it's in business or personal life? It's like, what is going on within your mind, and what words do you change within yourself to push through that? Like, do you see as like, okay, no matter what, I'm gonna get through this. This too shall pass. It's like, what are those quotes or scripture or whatever you use to get you through those tough times in life?
I always go back to, regardless of what, I've always pulled through, no matter what. Like when I left the Amish culture, I didn't know how. I jumped out of a 2-story house in the middle of the night to leave, like never looked back. So no matter what, I will always pull through. But I also go back to, I am a woman of faith. I don't need to know how. I get to trust that it's going to show up because it's never let me down. So it goes back to like, remember that I have unshakable faith, and that's how I walk. And when that faith gets shook, I either get to deepen my faith and my trust, or I get to go into a victim mentality and be like, well, it's not going to work and all these things. It's like, what's going to feel best for me at this moment? And there are times that you will be tested, and there are times that you will get to really step up, and it's always a new level. And that's the other thing is, you think you have faith right now, you get to go through these obstacles because that's going to create an extra level of faith and trust. So you can continue to use those tools.
Brilliant. Well said. Well said. What were some of those things that kickstarted your spiritual awakening? Because it's like usually something very drastic has to happen, whether it's a trauma, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a family member dying. It's like a lot of people really realize I won't say shortness of life, but just like life as like, oh, I forgot we're not always going to live to forever. We're going to die one day. Or it's like, oh, this is really important. And I've been kind of allowing it to be. It's like for me, my first aha moment was reading the book about self image. You may have heard of it, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. It's one of the OGs in the self improvement space. And it's like when I was reading it, my first aha spiritual awakening moment, epiphany, you could say, was that I didn't have to tell myself the story that I was telling myself at the time, which was that I was heartbroken, I was extremely introverted, I was anxious and depressed. Like that was kind of the whole identity story that I was telling myself. And once I read on the book where it's like, you don't have to live this story anymore. I'm like, I just never even thought about it. I thought that was just the way that it had to be. And that was like one of the first of like 30 different spiritual awakenings I've had. And so for you personally, what were some of those circumstances, events that led you to your spiritual awakening?
I would say there's a mix of journaling. There was a moment where I sat down and I was like, okay, this is where I'm at now. And I knew, you know that you don't have to stay in the situation. Like I knew that from lived experiences. I don't have to stay in the situation. I can change it. I can control it. But I was so programmed to believe that God was this big scary God. It's a very religious cult. So if you don't do XYZ, God is just gonna, burn you down. Like that's how you were raised. And I remember the moment that I had a connection where I was like, I get to choose that God is not this scary God, and I can build this connection back. And it took some time to build that trust back and to really have that, now to have a connection on a daily basis. And the way that God looks for me is not going to be the way that my family or other people see God. I don't call God as he, him. Like that's not how I resonate with God. Right. So it was this moment of, wow, like I really do get to be supported. And at the same time, I also really do get to feel deep love, not just from God, universe, source, but I get to feel that from myself. And even though I've not ever been told, I love you growing up, I get to say that to myself every day and feel that on a deep basis. And now that I felt that, I also get to deepen it. So now I get to see what are aspects of me that kind of like feel, ugh, like I don't really want to look at that. How can I love that and still shift it? And I think like that was a huge moment for me of just realizing that God and religion, religion's there's place for religion, if you follow religion and everything, but God is the relationship that I get to choose it to be.
Yeah, that's the really empowering perspective rather than what, I get the whole religion thing. I'm kind of, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to go there. But yeah, my relationship with God is a one on one thing. No one else gets to dictate or tell me how it is. It's because it's a knowing, it's a one on one phone line, essentially. Yeah, that's a really empowering way to look at it. When you, so through your work, do you work with like leaders or you said business CEOs, like authors? Um, how often, again, that percentage, like, do you work with actual like leaders in the space, like managers or like higher ups, or is it like is that strictly who you work with?
No, so we don't necessarily no, it's not strictly who we work with, and there are a lot of people that are business owners. And I'll give you an example. So someone that is a realtor, we just worked with someone that's a realtor, and they would not consider themselves a leader or a business owner because they work for a brokerage, but they were having challenges with like organization. And then as we dove in, it was like, oh, the self-worth is there, the confidence isn't there, on all these different levels. And even with authors, they don't necessarily consider themselves as leaders or as a business owner. So we try to say anyone that wants to come in, that wants to evolve and grow as a leader of self first, and we meet all of our clients where they are at. And what that means is we will go as deep and wide as you want to go. You just want to get organized on your business and scale your business, cool. But if you really want to find out why you can't figure out why you can't say no or set boundaries, or there's some trauma holding you back, cool, we will go there. But if that's not where you want to go, that's not where we're going to go. It's kind of like meeting them where they're at. And again, it's always different in a corporate setting versus a small business setting versus someone that is just, we've even worked with someone that they're just starting their business and they just need strategy. They're like, I just don't know where to start. And a lot of times when we see that, we're like, well, you do know where to start, but we're going to guide you to get you started and to get you rolling. It's also another reason why we don't hold people to certain containers. So you don't have to work with us for 6 months. If you come in and you do 1 or 2 sessions and you're good, cool. Contact us when you need us and keep it moving. Because we believe as we do the work and as we've seen our clients do the work, they may need a break to stop and to integrate what they learn and then come back and be like, okay, I'm now ready for the next level. Because everybody learns and grows at a different pace and speed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And going back to like this whole leadership thing, so if you are a leader of self, therefore you can, by that definition, be a leader. You can adopt that identity. So do you believe everyone should, or it's suggested that people, it would be helpful if people did adopt that identity of being a leader?
With the title, so that's just a title. Leader's just a title, right? And I like to say, even if you don't say that I'm a leader, I would look at what you embody on a daily life and see what areas of your life you are leading. And the reason why I say this is because if you are not leading areas of your life, someone else or something else is leading that area of your life. And just an example, if you are not leading in your business, someone is going to be come in there and tell you how to lead, or something is going to sway you to lead in another way. And it may not be authentic with you. This is why we see a lot of business owners are like, I want to make a pivot because I realized this isn't the business I want to build. I was building it off of someone else's strategy, right? Or a different version on a personal side, if you don't lead yourself to be strong and have a strong foundation of something within yourself, you're going to be shook every time something happens. Hurricane happens, or someone tells you that, ooh, I don't like that color on you. You're going to be shaken. And so you either get to choose to build that strong foundation and lead in all areas of your life. And this is something that I cannot stress enough is by taking leadership and leading in all areas of your life, that is a radical responsibility. It is honesty. It is accountability. And a lot of people don't want to step up to that plate. Trust me, I know how challenging it is. I've been there because it's easier to play the victim mentality and have all the excuses than saying, you know what, I'm going to take radical responsibility and I'm going to step up to the plate and change it.
What do you see in most leaders that they have the biggest resistance with? What stops leaders from really excelling as leaders to help develop the teams or people that work under them? What are some of those things that you see that are commonalities between leaders that stops them?
They don't truly know themselves. And when I say truly know themselves, they don't know how they operate. And when you don't know how you operate, you can't be vulnerable. Your communication sucks. You don't fully see yourself. And when you don't fully see yourself, you can't see your team. And it goes back to at the level at which you see yourself, hear yourself, and respect yourself and love yourself is how you see, hear, respect, and love others. And so when you do this at a deep level as a leader, your whole team transforms. But it is some deep inner work to really do some evaluation and to really look at it's okay to be vulnerable. You can still be a strong leader and be vulnerable. It's okay to still grow and evolve and work on yourself and lead a team. You don't have to have all of it together. Nobody has it together. Nobody does. Like that's just a concept. But I think like that's the biggest thing is really for leaders to know themselves. And there's so many tools out there that it's not about all these tools, but it's about coming back home to yourself. How do I operate? Knowing that example, I in human design, I'm a manifester, so I'm 4-6 profile, which means I operate very differently than my business partner. And so when I work, I'm like focused, locked in, like let's go, like all the time. Like that's how I work. She operates very differently. She's more like flow and like into this ease. She's a projector, right? She operates very differently. We also operate, our brains operate very differently. So knowing this, we get to show up and lead in different areas in different ways. And so the more you can know yourself as a leader, whether it's your astrology, whether it's your human design, whether it's this triggers me and I should probably work through it so it doesn't trigger me anymore, or this is how I like to show up, or having a good routine, that's the key.
You just open up a whole new side of the podcast talking about human design because it's like I just got into the space of human design, so it's like when it comes to spirituality, like I've been really deeply studying spirituality and metaphysics for the past like 2 or 3 years, but I never touched the side of tarot and astrology and some of these other sides yet. I'm still in the Hinduism, Buddhism, New Thought movement, a little bit of New Age stuff, and I whenever I made the post that got us connected about looking for a guest to be on my podcast, I interviewed like 2 or 3 people so far that mentioned like human design, and so it's like for me, gotta take the quiz. I gotta know what's the hype about, and for me, it came back that I am a manifesting generator, and I was doing a lot more research on it, and it led me to Gene Keys from Richard Rudd, which is just a guy who was really involved in human design, but he split off and changed it a little bit, made it his own way. And so it's like how true from the results that you got from human design seems to be very accurate, or do you think it's kind of like it hit or misses, or do you think it's like wow, this really is like the blueprint of who I am and how I live this life?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people aren't talking a lot about this of astrology, knowing my human design. All of these gene keys, all of them are tools. What we see a lot in is people take these tools and they identify with them and they create identities with them. And so I had somebody get on the call with me and they were like, oh, so you're a manifestor, you're a 4-6 profile. This is how you work. You can't do this. Like, you can't have multiple projects like this going on and you should only work these hours. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, those are your stories. Now, finding out my human design and that I'm a manifestor and a 4-6 profiles connected a lot of dots for me. It made me understand why I'm very high vision. And when somebody comes to me and says, I want to start a business and this is what it is, I'm like, boom, here's a strategy, here's the vision. Like, this is what you can align with. Like it's easy for me. Now, when it comes down to like organization, small details, no, miss me, because that's not like, it's not something that I'm great at. So I feel like when it comes to human design, it's like anything else, it's a tool. Take what resonates. Don't I over identify with, oh, I'm a manifester, I can't do that. Or this is me, this, I can't do that. Because there's also aspects that human design doesn't always take into consideration, and that some of your life experiences and the stories that some of the human design is like, oh, you're not, for a manifester, you're not going to reach your peak potential until you're in the 50s. And I'm like, no, that story is not true for me. So as you are looking at this, it will help you connect some things, but then again, be aware that if it's not an identity or a story that you want to have, don't take it on. It's just like, I'm a Pisces sun and Scorpio rising, Libra moon. I don't take on the identity that I'm like this emotional, all over the place Pisces. Can I be all over the place? Yes, but I can be very grounded and I know how to ground myself. So anytime I see those memes about Pisces being all over the place, I'm like, that's because they haven't healed and haven't done the grounding work. So you don't have to operate that way. So it's just taking those tools, but don't over identify with them.
They're just like a way for you to really see where you're at. Okay, I get what you're saying, because it's like for me, my profile, that was the most interesting part for me, because it says that I am a 6'2" profile, which is a role model hermit crab. So it's like I want to be a role model. Like my gift is to be a leader, but my shadow side is that I resort to a cave or like my solitude. So it's like there's like a contradiction there. It's like, dude, you want to speak, but once you get the opportunity to, it's like you go back into the shadow, into the cave. You like go away from that, which I thought was like, wow, that's something to really look deeper into. And how can I not adopt that belief anymore and just be like the whole role, or identify and choose the role model aspect? So that was very interesting for me. And it's like this whole astrology stuff is really interesting to me because I'm a Capricorn, but then also this is something that's really, I see as a really fun and cool thing. So I was born on the last day of 1999. So it's like I just squeaked in by one day in the millennia. And it's like if you look at the meaning of Capricorn, it's like we are like the legs of the zodiac signs. We build the foundation, and it's like bringing that into the gene keys and it's like human design. It's like I feel like I have a strong purpose here. I don't know what it is yet. I'm still uncovering and still looking deep within on that, but it's like it's really interesting. And so it's like the key is to really find those things that empower you within these tools that you choose. So it's like, okay, I completely understand that. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but ever since I made that post, all I see is human design stuff everywhere now. I don't know how I attracted human design people or people who talk about, but it's like it must be synchronicity. I don't believe in coincidences. There's a law of cause and effect. For some reason, it was meant to be put into my awareness. I don't have the perspective to know what it is. I probably never will, but really, really fascinating. How did you get introduced into human design, if you remember?
I would say just being on the spiritual, somewhere in the spiritual journey, someone told me, hey, to look into this human design. And then I had a human design reading done. And that was really eye opening for me to just kind of be like the shadow and the light side of that. And I would say, if you're going to get a reading done, please, please make sure it's done by a person that doesn't project stories onto you, and make sure that person is aligned with you, because it can kind of skew your perception of you. So, for example, I am a 4-6 profile. And so that means that I connect a lot of people with a lot of people. And I'm also a very, like, I'm a leader, I'm a role model. And on the flip side, one of those shadows is I also lone wolf. Like, I can be very much alone and by myself. And knowing and understanding that. And the person that did my reading, they were like, oh, yeah, so you lone wolf stuff. And, this is going to be something you're going to struggle with for the rest of your life. And that was a story I had taken on until I did some healing work. And I was like, actually, that's not my story. Can I be good alone? 100% yes. But I'm no longer going to lone wolf things. Like I now I have a business partner, right? So, um, but I just found it again through the spiritual journey of this really deepening my understanding and deepening like how do I operate on a day-to-day basis. And even with astrology, I went down a rabbit hole of that, of like, all these things. And you can go down so many different paths. And at some point you have to ask yourself, like, is it really serving me to go down these paths, or is it a way of me avoiding? Because I would go down all these paths to avoid my true calling and my true purpose because I got tricked into I don't know what my purpose in life is. And sometimes our purpose in our life is just to take action on what we know, and we don't get to be shown the whole staircase, right? So when I started coaching, I actually started out as a fitness coach, and because I was powerlifting, right? So I was like, I don't think this is my purpose, but we're here. And then I started coaching mindset, and then I started coaching business, right? So it's just like, but I had this pattern of like, let me learn all these tools, then I'll be ready, or then my purpose will show up. And sometimes it's, we can learn too much. It kind of goes back to our earlier, I think you made the comment earlier about reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts. But then at some point, it's like, okay, what's implementation time? And the same thing with human design and astrology is like, these things now about you. So what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to move forward? And you don't have to go research every freaking house in your astrology chart unless you want to be an astrologist, then go do so. But also, I think it sometimes takes away from our intuitiveness. Intuitively, we know things. If we can trust ourselves that we know those things, it goes back to like having deep inner trust that intuitively I know that I'm this person. And so I'm going to continue to follow that path, regardless if there's a blueprint out there or not. But I'm going to follow what I feel inside of myself.
So, what do you feel is the correct answer on this question of purpose? Do you think it's your purpose is created, or do you think it's discovered, or do you think it's something else?
I think a lot of people everyone has a purpose. We'll just start with there. Whether you create it or whether you listen to where you're being led, I think sometimes there's so much conditioning around you have to do XYZ to find your purpose. But what if instead of looking to find it, you ask yourself right now, what really lights me up right now? And what could I do for hours upon hours? And I always go back and I tell my clients, like, when they're stuck into this, like, I don't know, if I should or should not, it's like, okay, get grounded. And then from that grounded space, if I gave you $10 million and you got $10 million every single day, what would you do? What's the first thing that pops up? And usually I will tell them, like, brain dump all the things that you would do, pick the top 3 and move. I'm not saying they're going to be right or wrong. Pick the top 3 and move, and then at least you know where you're going and what you're doing. I'm doing this currently with my oldest. He's 17 years old. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And I'm like, okay, here you go. Dump everything out. Now you get to go try things. He thought he wanted to work with animals. I was like, cool, go volunteer at an animal shelter and see, like, is this something I can do for 8 hours? And he was like, no, I'm good. He's like, I don't want to do that. But it's getting also allowing yourself to have the space to experience, don't call them fail, allowing yourself to have the space to have the experience to be like, is this really what I want? And then if no one ever projected their opinions or you got rid of all the constructs, what would you really do? And that's one of the ways that I knew, the moment I knew that I was in my purpose, is one day I was sitting and I was like, if I had $10 million every day on repeat, what would I do? How would I act? What would shift? And for me, I would still be doing what I do because it's in alignment with what I love. And I also know that I will also be speaking on stages. And then I started applying for speaking engagements and just different things and allowing it to evolve and grow. But if I hadn't allowed myself to just start, even in fitness, I wasn't at my fitness goals when I started to be a fitness coach. Or if you don't want to be a coach and you want to start a product, like, start and stop thinking that don't get caught up in like purposes created or, I believe everyone has a purpose. It's whether we unlock and different levels will lead to different purposes. You might talk to me in a year and you'll be like, oh, that's your purpose now. Cool. Like, let's roll with it.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing that you shared during like that exercise, that technique of writing those things down, it's like the way that I understand that, the way that I look at it is like if I did those top 3 to 5, 10 things on a list of like let's say 100 desires or things that excite me, is that I won't regret it towards the end of life because it's like that because I do a lot of projecting to my like 85, 111, however old I want to live for on my deathbed or just when I know time is about to expire for me on this realm. It's like looking back on me currently, it's like what are those decisions which I know I will regret or I won't regret, and it really is coming down to just going all in on like those things that you really in the present moment desire, really want to do, that really excites you. So it's like nothing's gonna be worse than just laying on your deathbed and around all your kids, your grandkids, and your lover, and it's just gonna be like, I always want to be a dancer. I always wanted to be a backup dancer for Chris Brown or something, you know. Yeah, that would be like the worst regret ever. Not even going for it, but it's like even if you just went for it and it didn't work out, you must at least give yourself an opportunity to have the grace of at least attempting it.
Yeah, at least giving yourself the opportunity to try. And I will say for those that, have a fear of failure, work through that, but also fear of success is very real.
Mm. Yeah, I just came across that concept like a year ago from Lewis Howes. Like there's like a fear of failure, fear of success, and fear of doubt. It's like there's a lot of different fears that we have to conquer and go through. Before I ask my last question, where can people go to contact you, find more about you, and find out more about what you do?
Best place to connect with me is probably on Threads. I'm on Threads, Emily Adams underscore, and my Instagram also. And then I'm active on LinkedIn under Emily Adams. And I always say this on all the podcasts, my DMs are open. Feel free to ask any questions. And if you have specific questions, like slide in the DMs. I'm always down to have conversations.
Beautiful. And this is a question in which I just started when I wasn't intended, but it just intuitively felt right every single time. Um, and that question is, what is something deep down in your intuition, into your heart, that you feel the need to express to the world? What is that message? What is that phrase, that quote, that saying? What is it within you personally that you feel the need to express to all of humanity? What is that message?
Love yourself deep. And this is how we shift the collective when we do so. When we deeply love ourselves, that just pours outside of ourselves, and do the inner work yourself first. And that is how we shift the world.
Change yourself, change the world. Beautiful. Emily, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I trust that it will reach the right people with the right message at the right time. I am beyond thankful and grateful for you. It was a really fun conversation, and thank you so much for wanting to be on the show.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.